Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome to another installment in my What the Hell series. Once again, big thank you to all of you for all the love and support this series has gotten recently. These are a bunch of fun to make and I hope you are all equally enjoying these fun dive-ins. Now, with that said, let's talk about a fan favorite duo of the series that many may have in fact forgotten to time itself, the sub-boss tag team duo of deception, Noob-Smoke. Now, with that said, how did Noob-Smoke come to be? What ties this deadly duo together? Well, first, let's talk about their similarities. How did their paths divide? And ultimately, what brought them together as a team? So first things first, where do these two originate from? Well, the two were raised within an organization known as the Lin Kuei, a clan infamously known around Asia for its talented, ferocious assassins that brought blood, honor, and glory to their name. Now, something that many might not know about the Lin Kuei is actually how they recruit their students. It's not like a normal sort of enlisting where you arrive at their door and hand in your application. Instead, the Lin Kuei have historically kidnapped children from their families and raised them from either birth or at a very young age in order to turn them into the perfect killers. They believed that by doing so, they could remove their naivety and compassion and instead build upon their cruelty, brutality, and bloodshed, as they lacked that moral compass. So they wanted them to act on their violent tendencies. Now, whilst not well documented, it is known that many children that had entered the Lin Kuei did not survive its early trials. The weak would be shed and the strong would survive. Now, obviously from what you can tell, these trials are something both Noob and Smoke shared and survive. Now, in terms of origins, neither of these characters historically have ever interacted with each other within the Lin Kuei. It was only up until Deception where they actually became a duo. But that's not to say this is where their similarities end. In terms of fate, both of these individuals were forcibly changed against their will. For Noob, in this case Bihan, he was framed for a murder he never committed and was killed and corrupted in death, become a puppet of Quan Chi. For Smoke, he was taken by the very clan he had been loyal to his entire life and was stripped of his free will and his humanity to become a part of their cyber initiative. Both characters sadly did suffer from a fate worse than death, becoming echoes and in some cases, shadows of their former selves. But how did they come to be a duo? Well, first, let's briefly talk about both characters, starting with Smoke. Upon being cyberized by the Lin Kuei, Smoke was forced to hunt down his former ally and new Sub-Zero, Kuai Liang, against his own will, as he himself was not interested in being cyberized. Now, by participating in this attack, he was also part of the global scale invasion against his own home, as the Lin Kuei had sided with Shao Kahn, who was currently in the process of invading Earthrealm, wanting to merge the realm with his own. Now, luckily during this skirmish, when Kuai Liang encounters Smoke's consciousness was able to push past this programming and he was freed of the Lin Kuei's control. But this was unfortunately temporary, as he was eventually captured and stored deep within Shao's fortress. Bihan, on the other hand, suffered a far more vicious fate. Framed and killed at the hands of Scorpion for the death of the Shirai Ryu, he would be resurrected from the dead by the hands of Quan Chi. Brought back in order to serve the fallen elder god Shinnok, Bihan was now renamed Noob Saibot, making his presence known properly during the third installment. Now, whilst he did appear here, he didn't really get involved with any skirmishes, instead being given the mission to watch as the battle unfolded, feeding information back to his masters about when to invade. Of course, by the end of the third game, Shao is defeated and the Brotherhood of Shadow would strike, and whilst they were able to catch many off guard with the element of surprise, they do ultimately fail in their mission, as Shinnok is defeated and Quan Chi is on the run at the end of Mortal Kombat 4. With Quan Chi out the picture, Noob Saibot gains his own form of free will, and thus from this, begins to find ways to fulfill his own desires for power. This lust would only grow once Quan Chi and Shang Tsung slayed Liu Kang and Shao Kahn. With seats of power torn open on the mortal plane, Noob would take this opportunity to travel travel to Shao Kahn's fortress in the hopes of finding a relic that could elevate his power. And from what you can tell, this is how Noob came across Smoke. Upon finding the dusted relic, he was unimpressed, but did see potential. It was only until Noob began to rebuild Smoke, to which he would then be satisfied with his puppet. You see, while Smoke had returned in a way, he kind of didn't. Reprogrammed from the ground up, and taking on a new somewhat demonic design, he was given one and only one goal: to fulfill every ambition of Bi-Han's. So once again, Smoke was enslaved beneath someone else's ambitions. In Deception, the two briefly clashed with Kuai Liang, but this battle was cut short due to the interference from Serena. From here, Noob's plans would finally begin to flourish in Armageddon. Here, he would once again add additional abilities to Smoke, something that is damn right terrifying as we go into detail. You see, Smoke had now gained the ability to expose his opponents to what only could be described as a techno-organic virus that would physically infect, corrupt, and alter whoever inhaled it into some sort of cybernetic demon. Smoke became patient zero for this devastating parasite, and enslaved under the sinister mind of Bi-Han. We would see the effects of this virus during Armageddon's conquest mode, where the pair stormed the Lin Kuei temple, now under the control of Grandmaster Kuai Liang, and Smoke would begin to infect members of the Lin Kuei so they could overthrow and kill the Grandmaster. This plan, however, is thwarted once the Edenian demigod Taven arrives. This would actually mark the end of the duo's partnership, as Smoke is relieved of his enslavement, whilst Bi-Han, on the other hand, remains enslaved to the darkness, proceeding to go on in the Battle of Armageddon in the hopes of acquiring Blaze's incredible power. Now, whilst this duo was kind of a match made in heaven, as let's face it, it combined two absolute fan favorites into one dynamic team, Noob-Smoke was sadly overlooked, and that is sadly due to Deception's titular main big bad villain, Onaga. Onaga was a character that was built up as Shao's predecessor, and apparently the true successor to the One Being's vision. Along with this, the conquest mode of Deception was entirely focused around Shigenko, and how Onaga had manipulated him and had him basically bring on the end of the realms. So it is rather understandable in this case and scenario how such a goddamn cool duo had been somewhat forgotten by the fanbase. Now, in terms of gameplay, this is where things take a very unique direction. Unlike the current era of games, where variations are things you can pick and choose, the 3D era of games introduced a style of gameplay that was based on stances and different styles of combat. Typically, every fighter on the roster had 3 different styles, with the third being a weapon stance. This is where Noob-Smoke actually broke the mold. They were 2 full characters through and through, and only retained 2 styles of combat, that being their main movesets. So they did in fact lack a weapon stance in game. Along with this, historically, they have been the only sub-boss character that you didn't need a cheat code to unlock them with. Upon defeating them, they were simply playable. Now, whilst the team only had 1 appearance together, as they would later be separated into their own characters in Armageddon, the popularity of the duo would become an important part of Noob Saibot's moveset moving forward. You see, the Saibot shadow clone we are all now familiar with wasn't really a thing a long time ago. Originally introduced during the first trilogy of games, this idea was simply a concept that was kind of abandoned during the 3D era of games in favor of more of a stereotypical evil ninja moveset, gaining ninja stars and even a troll hammer. Along with this, he was of course paired with Smoke. It wasn't until the rebooted trilogy of games where Saibot took more of a prominent role in Bi-Han's moveset, acting as both an assist and physical extension of Noob Saibot as a character. And in all honesty, I'm glad they did this and abandoned the 3D movesets, as this one, visually, is just so much more creative and fun to watch, especially with the fatalities he has. They're really damn good, but it's very clear that the influence that tag team had with Noob has passed through from the 3D 3D era of games, and is now a part of his core moveset. So I do like how that has transitioned from that era of games. Now Smoke is completely different and on the other side of the coin in this instance, having retained most of his legacy based moves all the way from the very first game. So really not too much has changed up until now. I mean, outside of not turning into a cyborg, but instead an undead revenant of Quan Chi, which is arguably worse. And no, Triborg isn't quite canon as much as I'd love that. But with that said, this has been it for Who the Hell is Noob-Smoke. I hope you have enjoyed this, as I do love making these videos. And whilst I've always kind of talked about these two together in their own respective history of videos, I've never talked about them like this as a duo in this much detail. It's a lot of fun doing these deep dives on characters and factions that feel like a massive callback to a bygone age, as tragically, these two have not interacted with each other in the rebooted canon. At most, the best way to homage this team is by kicking up Mortal Kombat 9, jumping on the tag team mode, and playing them together as a duo. And you know what? All things considered, as MK9's tag team mode is unbelievably broken, you can definitely have an amazing time by doing so. Once again, I hope you've been all enjoying this one, as I have plenty more in the pipeline on the way. But until then, that has been it for me. So before this video does wrap up, if possible guys, let's try getting it to about 500 likes, and please do not forget to tick that bell and subscribe to keep up to date with all of my content coming out, as we do have the reveal of the new Mortal Kombat movie next week, so I will be breaking down the trailer and reacting to it, so you definitely want to keep an eye out for that. But for now, as always, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I'll see you all next time.